Please don't be shocked. How many are carrying tonight? No, I'm just kidding. Charles van Veek was a member of St. James Church. It was attacked by terrorists in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa, back in 1994. In fact, that was such a big event that Wikipedia has its own St. James Massacre page, if you want to look it up a little bit. Charles was a member of that church, and that night, 4 terrorists broke into one door. Now they think that they wanted to break, they had 4 doors. Very large church, very international church. Isn't that kind of nice for, diversity? Anyway, it was, because it's Cape Town, a lot of different folks there from all different countries. And they had 4 doors, very cold night. It was in June. Of course, their seasons are opposite of ours in South Africa. It's a cold night. And they actually locked 3 doors. They didn't want to work all 4 doors. So they locked 3 and only had 1 open that night. They think that the 4 terrorists were going to come in each door, armed with automatic weapons and hand grenades. 11 people were killed that night, but it would have been a lot more because Charles happened to work for a Dr. Peter Hammonds, who some of you know. His ministry is called Frontline Fellowship. And Peter Hammond is a missionary who requires his missionaries to carry. You can't be a missionary with him unless you carry. Now, it's not because they're going to blast people in the kingdom of heaven, repent or else. But they do have an awful lot of very dangerous missions. And there's bandits, and there's people who are not lawful, and they would like to get their 4-wheeler or their money or whatever. And as far as this mission is concerned, they can't have it. Charles was carrying that night a 38. I asked him how long the barrel was. He's an inch and 3/4. Now, 38 with 1 3/4 barrel about this long, you could barely hit the floor if you shot it from here. But not real accurate. But he was a member of the South African, ex-South African military at the time. Of course, he still is. And of course, he reacted. He was carrying because he was a member of Dr. Peter Hammond's mission, and he reacted. He shot, and realized that he was really too far away to do any damage. You go into training mode here. He ran to another spot where he felt he could get a better shot at him, and by that time they were gone. So think about it: 4 guys with automatic weapons and hand grenades are being chased off by 1 guy with a revolver that. And I've had conversations with Charles and with Peter Hammond about that, and they both told me the same thing. They said that when terrorists don't like to be shot at, they don't train like real soldiers under fire. And just a couple of shots. The amazing thing is we often hear that, and we hear this from pacifists, if you will, and they say things like, well, how could you witness to someone if you're trying to shoot at them? It might be a real effective way to witness. In this case, it was. Because he went and visited the terrorists in jail. They were later arrested, and they paid, and they listened to them. They said, we would listen to you a whole lot more than we would other people would just stand by while their family got massacred. And Charles is going to come and tell us about that next month. It'll be terrific to hear from Charles van Veek, and he will be here next month. Tonight, you need to talk to us about that more if you have any questions. He'll also be at the Independence Reformed Bible Church on the 19th. So that'll be the 21st. On the 19th, he'll be at the Independence Reformed Bible Church that Toby already mentioned there in Morgantown, speaking as well. Okay, tonight, our presentation, the theology of taxation from Scripture. Who, what, why would Jesus tax? Now, of course, we get this from the bracelets, right? And maybe you've seen the little bumper sticker, "Who would Jesus bomb?" Which actually isn't that different, by the way, from "Who would Jesus tax?" Think about it. Not that much different. Taxation can wreak more havoc on peaceful people and their property at times than bombs can, and quite frankly, has. We'll talk about that tonight, for sure. But first of all, I want to introduce you to a book. Some of you may be familiar with this. We don't have this book tonight. It's out of print. Harvest of Sorrow is the name of the book by Robert Conquest. This is about the Ukrainian famine. Anybody know what we're talking about here? Some of you do. Yes, in the 1930s, the Ukraine was called the breadbasket of the world, and Stalin managed to starve them to death. Think about it, you live in the breadbasket of the world, and you starve to death. Now, I always bring this up in the beginning of talk about taxation, and I will keep bringing it up, and I'll tell you why. Because I run into folks all the time who will say to me something like, hey, the Bible says to pay your taxes. And I'll say, whatever they are? Yeah. Bible says it. Where? Well, Romans 13 to go to. We'll look at Romans 13 tonight. We'll take a very close look at Romans 13. But this is what I bring up. You see, all Stalin did was said, you know what? I'm in charge. I'm going to tax you 100%. I'm going to tax everything. So I always ask my friends, how do you like to be here? Would you have, and Stalin came along, took all the grain, took all their food. They tried things like burning it outside, and after a while the apparatchiks got wise to that. They took them and they starved them to death. Now think how desperate you would be to be starved to death. Okay? So I asked them, my friends who just pay your taxes, are you going to like sneak a little bit of grain for yourself, maybe? Or are you going to pay all your taxes? Because Uncle Joe said to pay them all. How's your theology going to stand up at that point? The Harvest of Sorrow is the first full history, this book, of one of the most horrendous human tragedies in the 20th century. Between 1929 and 1932, the Soviet Communist Party struck a double blow at the Russian peasantry. Dekulakization. They called them kulaks, that fist. And the propaganda campaign against the farmers who were growing the food, they pictured them as tight-fisted. And they said things like, look at all the starvation, and yet all those farmers out there, they have all that grain. We got to go take it away from them. The dispossession and deportation of millions of peasant families and collectivization, the abolition of private ownership of land, and the concentration of the remaining peasants in party-controlled collective farms. This was followed in 1932 to 33 by a terror famine inflicted by the state on the collectivized peasants of the Ukraine and certain other areas by setting impossibly high grain quotas. Isn't that a funny thing to think about? A communist setting its grain quota. Anyway, in other areas by setting impossibly high grain quotas, removing every other source of food and preventing help from outside. Even the other areas of the Soviet Union were basically stopped from helping these folks. The death toll resulting from the actions described in this book was an estimated 14.5 million people, more than the total number of deaths for all countries in World War I. Now see, this is why we have to talk about a biblical theology of war. We have to talk about that. You know why? We always get set up, between war and peace. War bad, peace good. I think I'm in general agreement with it. Not really big on war myself. But what about all the people that are killed during peacetime? What about that? The peacetime casualties are a lot greater than the wartime casualties. Did you ever think about that? Think about it. 14.5 million right here in peacetime. We haven't even mentioned 55 million dead babies here during peacetime. We have to talk about that, but you cannot talk about a biblical theology of war without talking about a biblical theology of peace at the same time. Can't. Otherwise you have no context. That's why we're talking about taxes here tonight. Now, somebody's going to say, oh yeah, you guys, you want to talk about theology of taxes. Where's the Bible talk about taxes? You got this hypodermic needle, you're just injecting your ideas into the biblical narrative. Well, try this out. From Amos chapter 5. They hate the one who rebukes in the gate, and they abhor the one who speaks uprightly. Anybody got any parallels already to the US of A? Therefore, because you tread down the poor and take grain taxes from him. Though you have built houses of hewn stone, yet you shall not dwell in them. You have planted pleasant vineyards, but you shall not drink wine from them. For I know your manifold transgressions. What manifold transgressions? Well, I think we got one right here. And your mighty sins, afflicting the just and taking bribes, diverting the poor from justice at the gate. Therefore the prudent keep silent at that time, for it is an evil time. I don't need a show of hands here, but how many of you in the last month thought twice about saying something, perhaps one line, that needed to be said, but you're like, man, boy, if somebody gets a hold of this, I don't know. The prudent keep silent. It is an evil time. Seek good and not evil, that you may live. So the Lord God of hosts will be with you as you have spoken. Hate evil, love good. Oh, there's one for you. Oh, this is the 19, the 20, whatever we are, 15. We don't hate anything. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the bumper sticker, hate is not a family value? Sure enough is. Hate evil. There's a nice start for a family value. Hate evil, love good. You see, our politicians don't hate evil. And so many people that name the name of Christ are all like taking positions about evil. You know, posturing. Hate it. It may be that Lord God of hosts will be gracious to the remnant of Joseph. And speaking of hatred, I hate, God talking, I despise your feast days. I do not savor your sacred assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them, nor will I regard your fattened peace offerings. Hey, we're in church. We're doing all the, we're okay. You know, we're doing the stuff we're supposed to. You know, we're traveling to Jerusalem. We're doing all the ceremonies and whatnot. God says, you disgust me. You bloody, vile people, oppressing the poor and shutting down the one who will speak righteously. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your grain offerings, I will not accept them. I will not regard your fat and peace offerings. Take away from me the noise of your songs, for I will not hear the melody of your stringed instruments. But how about this? How about this? Let justice run down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. You know, they had no excuse. They had God's law. What's ours? Yeah, you look at the Israelites in the Old Testament, don't you? And say, what was their problem? They had the Red Sea. They had the plagues. They had that God's mighty hand. They had all this. They had the pillar of fire by night and the cloud by day. How in the world could they turn their back on God? But you know what? I would argue that we have far more. We are far more culpable. We have everything that they had plus. And we've seen God's blessing in nations. We still can't run away from them fast enough. Well, do we get it that taxation is a biblical, and I want to make the case tonight, moral issue? Moral issue. Not just for the policy wonks that graduate from Columbia with a degree in domestic policy. Moral issue here. First, is taxation a moral issue either in fact or amount or both? Fact or amount? Because both are important, right? If no, what are the implications? You'll see that tonight, I trust. If yes, may we assume the Bible speaks to this issue either directly or indirectly? If yes, what does it say? If it does speak, do we have an obligation to proclaim what it says? Now, as a pastor, I've already been told, you already know, just preach the gospel. You know, that word just is a little troublesome. Just. Well, the Bible speaks to other, it speaks to everything. It's all the gospel, right? What do you mean by just? Let's ask this another way. Who is authorized to tax? On what basis? To what end? How much? We have to take a minute to think about that, because we usually don't think about how much, do we? We ask, well, who's authorized to tax here? And then we answer that question. We don't talk about how much. We need to do that. And who is authorized to collect taxes by force? That's where we're going to spend some time tonight. I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. Because we as Americans cannot think of collecting taxes about any other way than at the end of a barrel of a gun, right? Oh, we don't collect taxes at the barrel of a gun, end of a barrel of a gun. No, you just want to throw my whole family out on the street in Douglasville, or Douglas Street, where I used to live in Reading, right? There I was, homeschooling my children, right? But if I didn't pay my school taxes, in the name of the children, America's children. There's a nice Orwellian term for you, isn't it? America's children. Pennsylvania's children. Wow. But if I didn't pay my taxes, then my children would be thrown right out of the house. But it's all done in the name of the children. Okay. If I am owed taxes, does that mean that the entity owed may use force to collect them? I want you to think about that tonight. Christ said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Did he say Caesar has the right to come with a spear and collect it from you at the point of that spear? Did he say that? We'll look at that tonight. Opening considerations still, Psalm 24, 1 and 2. The earth is the Lord's in all its fullness, the world and those who dwell therein, for he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. So, who is authorized to tax? After all, the owner is God. We just read that, right? The earth is the Lord's. The owner is God. Only the owner has the moral authority to tax. No one else. No one else has the moral authority. Now, make a distinction, of course, between moral authority and good old-fashioned brute force, right? There's a difference between authority and power. Don't forget that. We're not talking about the power here because the state has the guns. They can collect taxes from us. But who has the moral authority to do so? Big difference between raw power and moral authority. We urge you to make no mistake on this point. The claim to the right to tax is a claim to ownership. If it is true that you must pay me taxes in order to remain in your house, okay? Pay me taxes, I'm the state, in order to remain in your house, then in what sense do you own your house? In what possible sense could you own it? You don't own your house. You may stay as long as you keep paying me. That's how you get to stay. Keep paying me. I'll keep collecting. We urge you to make no mistake on this point. The claim to the right to tax is a claim to ownership. You may stay as long as you keep paying me. But you can't stay any longer than that. Now, this is going to sound a little bit maybe crazy. And the illustration I'm going to use doesn't really follow. But did you ever get out the Monopoly board and start killing your baby sister?
You probably did that.
I was the one that got killed. But you know, and she mortgages all her property, sells everything, nothing left, and she lands on your hotel on St. Charles Place.
Oh.
It's over. No, it's not, is it? You make some kind of a deal with her because you want her to keep on going past go and collecting $200 and land on your hotel again, right? That's what you do. What good is it to chase her off entirely? See, they figured this out here, folks. They don't want to throw us out. They don't want to throw us out of our home. They want us to stay there and keep paying. Now, my illustration perhaps is not exactly parallel, but they want us to live. It's like I do when I see a person smoking cigarettes. I've got rid of my fundamentalist misgivings over cigarettes. When I see someone smoking a cigarette, I say to them, live long and smoke many cigarettes. Because as soon as you guys die off they're going to come after us for all those taxes they're collecting every single box. Please, smoke them and live long. All right. Throughout this presentation, it is our contention that taxation is a moral issue. We're not talking about the practical or utilitarian reasons for taxation forcibly collected. You know, policy wonks sit around and talk about necessary services for the people of Pennsylvania. And how can we best meet the needs of Pennsylvania? No. It's a moral issue. Start with that. My friends, if ever we run into a moral issue and we don't start talking about the morality of the issue first, but we start talking about the practicality of it first, we've lost the argument right there. It's over. Moral issue here. This is not a pragmatic discussion about necessary services or compelling state interests or the children. This is a discussion about the morality. This is a discussion about the morality and ethical legitimacy of the means and ends of taxes collected by force or by any other means. Some opening assumptions. Yeah, we're still in the opening. Yes, the Bible does speak to the issue of taxation. Have you ever heard of render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's? Now, some of you have heard at least part of this presentation before, but I want to ask. When the issue of taxation has come up, either in church or in any kind of Christian circle, have you ever heard any other passage mentioned other than perhaps Romans 13, maybe the 1 Peter passage, and render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's? Anybody ever hear any other passage? We will look at two of the three of those tonight, and see what they say. Oh yeah, you can make the Bible say anything you want it to say. Well, someone says that. Well, why would we even study it? Yeah, I'll listen, but don't quote the Old Testament. That doesn't apply to the church. Yeah, you know we have two Bibles, don't we? We have the Bible for them and the Bible for us. Let me ask you something. Jesus Christ. How many times did he say it was written? Actually, it's a trick question. I got you. Sorry. What is it? It is written. Oh yeah. You see, we read this, and we in our mind we read it with our eyes, but it comes out it was written. That's just the way we do it. And Christ could have said it was written. Every time he ever talked about the writings, he used it is written. Jesus Christ quoted the Old Testament 70 times. And us geniuses know better, don't we? Wow. Okay, here we go. Then my favorite, of course, the easy one. Why are we talking about taxes? We should just preach the gospel. Yeah. Do you remember why? Do you remember why it was that Moses first approached Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go"? And Pharaoh understood authority. Remember what he said? Who's the Lord? There's not a lot of room for more gods than me around here. Who's the Lord that I should listen to what he says? But remember what Moses said? He didn't say, "Let my people go so we can hike on over to Canaan." He said, "Let my people go that they may go into the wilderness and serve me." Now Pharaoh comes back and he says, "Well, they're going to run away." That was ridiculous. That slave population, where were they going to go? They weren't going to go anywhere. But understand this, that the original request of Pharaoh was for service to God. And understand this too, them living in the land of Canaan and obeying God's laws and his word in Canaan was also service to God. And any kind of taxation by force that stopped them from doing their job in the land is an offense to a God who called them to serve him. You know, we happily quote, "Whether therefore you eat or drink, or whatever you do all to the glory of God." Whether you eat or drink, that sounds pretty small, right? eat or drink. But then someone comes up with the ideas of taxation and public policy, we're like, well, I don't know. It's all the same. See, we got the eat or drink thing down. What we believe the Bible clearly teaches is kind of where we're going today. The tax issue is often addressed in Scripture. The family is the only institution that is biblically qualified to take risks and make a profit. Not the church, not the state. The church and the state are owed money from the family. But since they're owed money, they can't take risks. What kind of risk do you take when you're already owed the money? Do the safe thing. The Bible does not allow for direct forced taxation on God's people ever. Now, we have plenty of examples of direct forced taxation in the Bible. We don't have time to look at them all tonight. But what we see consistently when we see that is it's against God's law, and it's pagan people doing it. We'll see one bad example tonight. Forced taxation and apostasy are usually seen together. Only God is qualified to define taxation limits. We'll see that. Those who will not address taxes, either specifically or generally, show that they do not recognize the priority of the family. My friends, who are taxes generally aimed at? Oh, we say corporate taxes and so forth, but you know what? At the end of all these taxes is somebody who eats and sleeps a person in a family. That's at the end of it. Furthermore, they show that loving their neighbor is not a priority. Let me ask you something. My friends want to tell me to just preach the gospel. And sometimes I'll say, Psalms. Of course, those of you who've been here for a while know that there's actually 3 Bibles, right? There's 3. There's the New Testament, then there's the Old Testament. You know where the 3rd one is, right? New Testament, Psalms, and Proverbs. Yeah. So I can quote Psalms to some of my Old Testament friends that don't like it, right? Because that gets printed in some of the New Testament, right? So Psalms is good. How about this from Psalms? Now it's slipped my mind. Oh, come on. This is what you have to do when you don't have everything written down. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. So I've asked some of my good friends, don't you think it's an act of love for one's neighbor to promote righteousness in the civil sphere? Don't you want your neighbor to rejoice? Now he's mourning because of all the wickedness going on. No problem. Just get out there and preach the gospel. You see, this gospel thing that we've got going on, I would argue we've done more to the Bible with our modern teaching than the Jehovah's Witnesses have done to it. We still have the Bible, but you know we've got this crazy filter going on, keeping everything out. Man shall not, Christ saying, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. It all applies somehow. Finally, they deny that God is God of the society as well as God of the individual, the family, and the church. Now, this is a good one. Run into this many times. Hey, is Jesus Lord of your family? Yes, amen, brother. Amen. Is he Lord of the church? Oh, yeah. Is he Lord of the state? No. No. They get their own little territory. Yeah. You know, so often throughout the scriptures, God's judgment falls on nations, doesn't it? The only entity that is allowed to make a profit is a family. Let's do this again. Okay, I'm sorry. Allowed to make a profit is a family, not the church and not the state. It is only through the family that the church and state exist. You can have a family without a church and a family without a state, but you can't have a church or a state without a family. If the family is to do its job, the members of the church and the state must understand their respective roles in relation to the family. Church, support and encourage. State, protect. Is it the job of the state to protect the family? Oh, you bet. Yeah, you bet it is. That's the state's job, protection. We get that from Romans 13. We'll see that a little bit later. Well, we believe the Bible clearly teaches God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion, meaning men, over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female, he created them. Not really a pleasant passage for those who hate Christ. That man is supposed to have dominion. That the family is supposed to have dominion. God bless them. Okay, so we have, see, look, have dominion, right? Okay, good. That's a nice little general concept, unless you find out how it's supposed to happen. How's it supposed to happen? Then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish, birds, air. One of the ways this dominion thing works is to fill this world up with people. My friends, the people in power, you know, hate children. You can't come up with any other conclusion. You can't do it. 55 million dead babies, and you know what? That's the very thing that God says we're supposed to do. Fill this place up with people. My kids hear me say it all the time, laugh about it. One of my statements, where is everybody? Where are all the people who have been around for 6,000 years? Where are everybody? I just recently flew out to Los Angeles. I was switching flights, and you know, square mile after square mile, especially in the West, you're lucky if you barely see a trail someplace. Where is everybody? But see, there is so much in these foundational verses for the modern status to hate. We wish to focus the point of the passage, which is the family received the mandate, not the church and not the state. The mandate is given to the family from the very beginning. Now, let's look at a few passages very quickly. 1 Samuel 8, Matthew 22, 15 through 22, that's our render to Caesar passage, and of course Romans 13, which probably everybody knows. All right, 1 Samuel 8, here we go. Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of the second was Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba, but his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after, watch these three things, dishonest gain, took bribes, perverted justice. Pay attention to that. That's coming back. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, look, you are old and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. Cut off to a bad start, right? Like want to be all like the other nations? The nations that have been carrying you into slavery in the 400 years during Judges? Not a good beginning. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. So Samuel prayed to the Lord. Then the Lord said to Samuel, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. Things are going south in a big fat hurry here. According to all the works which they have done since the day I brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods, so they are doing to you also. Stop for a minute. They didn't step up and say we're going to serve other gods, did they? Did they step up and say, Sam, you know this God that you serve, we're kind of done with him, and we like a Molech or Chemosh or whoever, Baal later on. Is that what they said? No, they said, give us a king. What's this thing about serving other gods? Because we know that the God of the society makes the laws of the society. You choose godless laws, don't pretend that you're serving Christ anymore, because you're not. And this is what God is telling Samuel here. Now therefore heed their voice, however you shall solemnly forewarn them and show them the behavior of the king will reign over them. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who asked him for a king. And this is what he said. You know, I got every time I read this, I'm like, so Samuel's trying to talk him out of a king. I think he'd be talking me into a king for for what we pay. This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen. And some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands, captains over his 50s, set some to plow his ground, reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. Now they just asked for a king to reign over them like the other nations, right? And that's going to make things better. Who's kind of the focus here of the new kingship? Not them. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields. He doesn't want the slop. You can keep that, kids. He'll take the good ones. By the way, how did the fields get to be good? Just like fell out of the sky that way? He will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take 1/10 of your grain, your vintage, and give it to his officers and servants. He will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, your donkeys, and put them to his work. Not much left. He will take 1/10 of your sheep, and you will be his servants. And you will cry out on that day because of your king whom you have chosen for yourselves, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Stop there for a minute. How do we know? How is Samuel concluding that you will be his servants? After all, he's just taken your stuff. How do they conclude he's his servants? Because the one who gets to take your material goods is the one who will wind up serving. You might fake yourself out and think, oh, it's okay. They'll still let me go to church. Yeah, they will for a while. But don't think they're not going to come for you in the church. Don't think that. Our prime example we talked about before, Lot. Dear Lot thought he was going to be safe in his house. You remember where the wicked people first gathered? They gathered in the square. Then they came for him. Today, we feel like we are almost preaching that it's a godly thing to give up the discussion in the square. Let them have the square. We'll take the church. Guess what? They're going to take the square, and then they're coming for your church. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, no, but we will have a king over us, that we may be like the nations. Wow. And that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Yeah. Yeah, I'll be able to stay home and watch ESPN while the king and all the professionals are out doing the fighting. Now, we hope to talk about the war thing. We don't want to get sidetracked with that right now, but there is a country in this world who has been at peace for hundreds of years. And one of the reasons this country has been at peace is because the men in that country all know how to fight. You know what I'm talking about, right? We're talking about the country that shouldn't exist at all. We're talking about the Swiss. There should be no Switzerland. What kind of a country can you have when they have 3 different main languages? They've been at peace for hundreds of years. You think about that? World War II? I'm no geo-planner guy, but if I was taking over Europe, I know which country I want first in my pocket. I want one with all the gold. How in the world do they miss the whole thing? We'll talk about that when we get to war. But let's go back to what Samuel said. He said, this will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your, it's quite a list, sons, daughters, best fields, vineyards, olive groves, and give them to his servants. 1/10 of your sheep, he will take your, key word there, it's yours. He's taking it. Not his. It's yours. 1/10 of your grain, sheep, servants, finest young men, donkeys, put them to his work. You shall be his servants. But why would the king take these assets? Well, the king needs chariots, horsemen, entourage, captains, plowing, harvests, weapons maintenance, perfumers, cooks, bakers, servants, officers. His work in general, ultimate domination over you. Can you see the growth of the bureaucracy here in just one generation? Wow. Well, how did it work out? We can see. Let's start out here in 1 Samuel 22. When Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered, Saul was staying in Gibeah under a tamarisk tree in Ramah with his spear in his hand, and all his servants standing about him. Then Saul said to his servants who stood about him, "Hear now, you Benjamites. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds?" Now think about this for a minute. Think what's going on here, my friends. Please think about this. They hired Saul to go out and fight their foreign battles, and Saul didn't have a half bad beginning. Truth be told. But look what's happening after a real short time. Who's Saul at war with? The enemies of Israel? And my friends, if you ever look at a map of Israel, they had enemies all around. They had them to the north, they had them to the south. And whenever people went fighting, the north against the south, guess where they had to march right through? You had the Mediterranean Sea to the west. You had the crazy deserts to the east. There's only one place they could go. Israel had to remain militarily strong if they were going to be at peace at all. So who's Saul chasing around? Saul is trying to kill the #1 best citizen in all of Israel. Because he's a threat to his power. He's trying to kill David of all people. You remember David, right? Wasn't he the guy that, oh yeah, I remember now. It's coming back to me, Goliath. Yeah. Oh, Saul says, let's go out and do the right thing. Let's kill that guy. Wow. But look at this. Hear now, you Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? Give you every one of you fields and vineyards. Already Saul is doling out property. Well, how did he get this property? Was Saul like someone like a really successful farming family in Israel? No. Not at all. You remember how they found him, right? They couldn't find him all day because, think about it, he was going out to find the donkey that was lost. Now that's a pretty basic job, isn't it? Hey, go find it. Do you think if you had any servants at all, you might give that job to your servants to keep your son doing something else maybe a little important down home on the farm? His family was so poor that Saul had to go out and find the donkey. And now he's doling out fields and vineyards and giving out all kinds of favors to his buds. You see, this is how it's working out. He's taken their property, and now he's using their property to consolidate his power. Does that sound like what happens to our tax dollars, my friends? Yeah, there's Saul. So the priests, let's go back a little bit to chapter 21. David is on the run. We're backing up now. David is on the run from Saul. Saul's trying to kill him. He comes along to some priests. And David says, I'm hungry. So the priest gave David holy bread and some of the men who were with him. For there was no bread there but the show bread, which had been taken from before the Lord in order to put hot bread in its place on the day when it was taken away. That's all they had. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Doeg, an Edomite, the chief of the herdsmen who belonged to Saul. Whoa. Edom, an Edomite. What? You're traditional enemies of the Israelites. How does Doeg get to be chief herdsman? How did that happen? Chief herdsman. Oh man, I thought all the Israelites were going to line up for the plum jobs. Well, Doeg is a very special person, as we'll see in a minute. He's willing to do jobs that the Israelites won't do. Some jobs you just need a foreigner for. So let's go back. So the priest gave David holy bread, for there was no bread there but the show bread which had been taken from before the Lord, in order to put hot bread in its place on the day when it was taken away. Now, this chief herdsman there that belonged to Saul, let's just go forward here. When Saul heard that it was David and the men who were with him, that they had been discovered, Saul was staying in Gibeah. And you know what, I got things wrong here. Let me go this one. He says this. I'm sorry, I missed that there. This is Saul's speech. And when he just finished this, he said, will the son of Jesse give everyone he fields and so forth. Now, all of you have conspired against, watch this. Now, we talk about our politicians being narcissistic and just thinking about themselves. Why shouldn't they? When they have that kind of power over you and I to get our goods, you think we think about us? Losing sleep over how we're doing? Look at Saul. Look who Saul's thinking about. All of you have conspired against me. No one reveals to me that my son has made a covenant with the son of Jesse. There is not one of you who is sorry for me, who reveals to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait. Wait a minute, Saul, we got you to defend Israel. Aren't you concerned about defending Israel? Not hardly. More concerned with himself. Then answered Doeg the Edomite, who was set over the servants of Saul, and he said, I saw the son of Jesse going to Nob to Ahimelech. He inquired of the Lord, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. All that is true. So the king, Saul, sent to Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all his father's house, the priests who were in Nob, and they all came to the king, and Saul said, Hear now, the son of Ahitub. He answered, Here I am, my lord. Then Saul said to him, Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me to lie in wait, as it is this day? Ahimelech, probably a little scared at this point, answered and said, the king and said, And who among all your servants is as faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law, who goes at your bidding and is honorable in your house? Did I then begin to inquire of God for him? Far be it from me, let not the king impute anything to his servant, or to any in the house of my father, for your servant knew nothing of this little or much. I didn't know he was running away from you, Saul. And the king says, You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house. Now, I'd like to really spend a whole lot of time on this one. You know how we go to our politicians, right? With our reasons that we've logically figured out for them to come to our side, right? We lay out our logic. How is logic working here? He lays out, well, I didn't know. I would never do that. You're going to die. Do you ever feel like that's how they reason with you? Why not? They have a right to your goods. And they should listen to you. You and me, why? For the most part. For the most part, not entirely. In the end, they got what they started with. Samuel's sons were about dishonest gain, bribes, and the perversion of justice. Frustrated with this situation, apparently, they rejected God and chose a king. A king that was all about, let's see, I think we've seen this before, dishonest gain, bribes, and the perversion of justice. Only now they had a nice little tax burden to go with the whole thing. And a powerful king who they couldn't stand up against. Did you notice that when Saul got a hold of everybody's goods, the first thing was attacked? You see who he killed? You see, he got two for one. We can't overlook this right here. This is an important passage. He went and he killed the priests, and he killed all their families, my friends. He got his subjects' goods, and the first thing he attacks is the church and the family. Who said taxation is not a moral issue? Matthew 22:15-22. Quickly. The Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk. They sent him their disciples with the Herodians. Wait a minute. That can't be right. They hated each other. Wait a minute. The Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk, and they sent to him their disciples with the Herodians. My, aren't we tight all of a sudden? Isn't this getting downright cozy? Pharisees and the Herodians. Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God in truth. Nor do you care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. Tell us therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Wait a minute, why does Christ say that? This is just an honest question, isn't it? You know, we don't know. We're trying to figure out if we should pay taxes to Caesar. And we know that you're a great teacher. And please enlighten us. Right out of the bag, right off the bat, he calls them hypocrites. One of the things we need to look at here too, at the Mid-Atlantic Reformation Society, is the way Jesus Christ argues sometimes. The way he talks sometimes, we throw him out of our churches. Oh, come on, they're just honest people. He calls them hypocrites. I want to see why at the very beginning. They're hypocrites because they're already paying taxes. You don't show up with Herodians. But they showed up with Herodians to say if somebody's going to be offended, right? That's what they did. He says, don't pay taxes to Caesar, the Herodians are offended. Do pay taxes to Caesar, then the Pharisees are offended, right? That's why they're hypocrites. Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money. So they brought him a denarius. Oh. If only our tax money was a denarius. If only. And he said to them, whose image and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. And he said to them, render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and the things that are God's. When they heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way. Now what's happening here? What's going on? Let's get the lessons out of this. First of all, it is clear from this passage that Caesar is owed something. It's also clear that God is owed something. The ones asking the question were not concerned with the glory of God or the reign of his Son. That's obvious. Christ showed them that they were hypocrites because they were already serving Caesar. So their question was ridiculous to begin with. They didn't really want to know. Well, let's ask. Since it is clear that some things belong to Caesar, we must ask what things belong to Caesar. You ever think about that? Now, I'd be shocked if everyone in this room hasn't heard, again, a message at some point, give to Caesar things that are Caesar, to God the things that are God's, and that's why you got to pay taxes. But when you heard that sermon, where you ever asked these questions, first of all, what things belong to Caesar? Don't you think that might be something important to figure out? What things belong to God? Don't you think you might want to make a distinction between the two? Well, whose authority? Caesar's or God's? Let's stop right there. When we think of what belongs to Caesar, who do we normally go to figure out what belongs to Caesar? Who's our source of authority? Hint. It's not God. Fourthly, well, I asked that. Who do we ask belongs to God or Caesar? Then fifth, what does Caesar owe God? Caesar owes God his complete allegiance. Caesar is required by the God of the universe to bow down and kiss the Son, just like all the rest of us. In fact, if you read Psalm 2, perhaps even more so, you can make the case that if anybody owes Christ their allegiance, anybody, it doesn't end with the kings. It starts with them. Now, we don't have time to look at that, but Psalm 2 is applied now. If you don't believe me, look at how it's applied in Acts 4. In Acts 4, they applied Psalm 2 to their situation. Not some future time, right then and there. That'll have to go to another talk sometime. Finally, we get insight into the passage through the employment of the to be verb. Watch this. Language is important here. They said to him, Caesar's, and he said to them, render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. The use of this verb tells us that it is God's ordinance. He defines the things that are. That Caesar is owed anything is due to God's decree. Jesus Christ did not say, render to Caesar the things that he says are his. Render to Caesar things that are. The state of being verb. These things belong to Caesar before we have this discussion. They'll belong later. That are. Language is important. Okay, quickly. Romans 13, 1 through 7. I know you thought we'd never get it, right? Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. Okay, we see all legit authority is connected to God. All of it. No legit authority exists apart from God. If it's apart from God, it's power, it's not authority. The state is not independent from God. Might be shocked, some of our state officials, to find out that they're deacons of God. That's the word, diakonos. Or servants. That might be kind of interesting to them. Thirdly, to resist the authority is to resist God. But what's that authority for? What's the end of that authority? For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. Rulers are to terrorize evil works. That's what it says. My friends, in any society, someone's going to be terrorized. You know that, right? It's either going to be the righteous or it's going to be the wicked. The wicked should be terrified to come out of the closet and commit abominable works. Those who practice evil should be terrified, and those who do good will not be afraid of civil magistrates who fear and acknowledge God. For he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is God's minister, God's deacon, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore you must be subject, not only because of wrath, but for conscience sake. The civil magistrate serves God for the benefit of God's people. Motivation to do good, internal and external. This is why we teach our children, right? We teach our children and hope that by the time they grow up, they'll have the internal mechanism to stay away from evil. But actually we see both. Because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. Wrath being the punishment by the civil magistrate, conscience being your standing before God. We fail if we don't teach both. Civil magistrate is God's servant. Okay, here we go. Here's Peter. For because of this is why you pay taxes. I find it amazing that in our modern Christian circles, and with our emphasis on Romans 13, nothing wrong with that. But we have a real clear statement why we pay taxes. It's right there. This is the reason why you pay taxes. Why? We just saw it. So that the rulers will terrorize evil workers. It's like right there. For they are God's ministers attending continually to this very thing. What thing? Terrorizing the evil workers. Oh, let's add in there making sure that all the washing machines cost the same amount of money so that the poor can own the washing machines. And oh, let's get involved in education. And oh, let's get involved in, my favorite, the helium fund. You know we have that, right? The helium, it's not the helium fund, it'd be the helium deposit or whatever.
Bank.
What's it called?
Bank.
Bank, a helium bank, yeah. You know we have that, right? Yeah, see, in World War I, we were fighting a big war, right? And the only flying instruments at the beginning of it pretty much were those big dirigible things. They needed helium. And so in order to fight the war, you had to have a helium bank. You never know when one of those things might get shot out of the sky. You need more helium, right? Build another one. It's good to have helium. We still have a helium bank. Not really covered by Romans 13. Kind of going out on a limb here. Continue, this very thing, render therefore to all their due. Paul is emphasizing it here. Taxes, to whom taxes, customs, fear, honor. Here we have the reason why we pay taxes. Again, the tense of the verb to be helps us understand that payment of taxes is based on God's ordinance, not man's. For they are God's ministers. Now please remember this. The state may be owed taxes, but that fact does not carry with it a right to collect those taxes by force. The state has no more right to force you to pay taxes than the church has the right to force you to pay the tithe. Do you know that under God's economy in the Old Testament, they did have taxation? But you know what they didn't have?
IRS.
They didn't have the IRS. Yeah, that's my thing. Internal revenue. Yeah, George Orwell with his tackle language. Internal Revenue Service. I mean, is that service?
Israelite Revenue Service.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Saul would love that one. Internal Revenue Service. No, you know what they didn't have? It is the IRS they didn't have. They did not have any means at all to forcibly collect taxes. Did you know that? Not one. They had no means to do it. You know why? Because it was voluntary. Now, some of our forebears, if you want to read more about the Scottish Covenanters, you can. There's a lot written about them. One of the reasons why they got so upset at Charles, especially the second, was because Charles II, as head of church and state, was forcing them to pay the tithe. And what was happening was the various and sundry pastors showed up drunk, if they showed up at all. You can read the story. Some of them never showed up at all, but they sort of owned the chapel there, right? And they were collecting the tithe by force, so they didn't have to show up. And the Scots rebelled. Let me ask you something. I want to be your pastor. And I'm not really all that interested in pastoring. It's messy. People's problems. I enjoy golf. And I enjoy travel. And I decide that since you owe the tithe, that's where I start, that I can now get into your paycheck and forcibly collect it. How many of you are going to keep coming to my church? I hope none of you. I hope. Where do we get the idea that the state has the right to forcibly collect our taxes? We do not get that from the Bible. We get it from somewhere, but not from the Bible. To say again, we believe the Bible clearly teaches the tax issue is often addressed in Scripture. The family is the only institution that is biblically qualified to take risk and make a profit. The Bible does not allow for direct forced taxation on God's people ever. Forced taxation and apostasy are usually seen together. We see that certainly in the case of Saul. Only God is qualified to define taxation limits. Those who will not address taxes either specifically or generally show that they do not recognize the priority of the family. Furthermore, they show that loving their neighbor is not a priority, and they deny that God is the God of society as well as God of the individual, the family, and the state. So, as clearly taught in 1 Samuel 8, Matthew 22, Romans 13, who would Jesus tax by force? Nobody. He has given the dominion mandate to the family. What would Jesus tax? Well, he taxed in the Old Testament, if you will. We say nothing here, but this is by force. Who would Jesus tax by force? In the Old Testament, they had a talent tax, it appears. I'm really intrigued by that. I'm intrigued. You know, they say whatever you tax, you get less of. Right? So why are we taxing income? The talent tax to me is ingenious. I mean, it's the Bible. Okay, so what am I going to say? But think about it. Think about this. They all had to pay the same thing. Then after that, whatever you made, you kept. This was a regressive income tax. I've often said that. I want to tax poor people. That's why I want to tax. I want to tax their I'm not going to do it, of course, but maybe I would. Then the more they make, the more they keep. And that is we see that with the talent tax in the Old Testament. Everybody paid the same thing, but after that, whatever you made, it was yours. So what to do? While you're thinking about this, the strong linkage between politics and religion in the late 19th century was having a profound social impact, one that deeply troubled Marx and Engels. Who's the Yahoo that didn't shut off his phone? It's coming from over there, isn't it?
Somebody's
Behind the bar?
I think that looks like my jacket. It sounds vaguely like my phone. All right, enough of that. Mrs. Sane is here, so she's not calling me. All right. The strong linkage between politics and religion
Now they're trying her.
in the late, are they calling you now?
I think so.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Toby, you said so. I didn't do it.
There's always one Yahoo.
Yahoo for everybody. The strong linkage between politics and religion in the late 19th century was having a profound social impact, One that deeply troubled Marx and Engels, two men of blood. The following story illustrates just how it incensed them. While playing a well-known Victorian parlor game with Karl Marx's daughter, one of the few that frankly survived, Engels answered with a single word a confessions question. They're playing a parlor game. You have to confess. What is your favorite motto? What is your favorite color? And then asked whom he hated most in life. Spurgeon was Engels' curt one-word answer, referring to the English Baptist preacher whose sermons in the 1850s and 1880s drew as many as 20,000 people. Spurgeon. It wasn't some policy wonk someplace who was making an argument for lower taxes. It wasn't even the anti-socialists like Frederick Bastiat, who I have great respect for. It was Spurgeon, a preacher, a pastor. There was a time, my friends, when the wicked people that wanted to oppress your neighbors had to get past the pastors. They had to get past them first. And what are our pastors doing now? We're getting photo ops at the mayor's prayer breakfast. Okay. Photo ops aren't the worst thing, but if my friends, listen, if you're a pastor, and you are the shepherd, and you're to protect those sheep, and don't tell me that those politicians are not wolves. Don't tell, no. So what to do? Future, find at least one thing to do. Can't do everything. But sometimes we say, well, I can't do everything. But that doesn't mean you can't do anything. Use the abilities that you have. If you're good at writing, write. If you're good at teaching, teach. Maybe you have grandchildren that you can teach, children. Thank God for what you still do have. You know, I talk to some of my friends sometimes from other countries. And they don't want to hear my tales of woe, what's happening here in America. I want to tell them, believe me, I do. I look at what we had, and I want to whine and moan and complain. They say, you know what, you haven't seen anything yet. You have all kinds of opportunities still to promote the law of God and His Word. Thank God for what you still have. Be grateful for that. All of us need to be. I think me worse than anyone. Use what you have, not what you don't. You know something we all have? We've talked about it here before, we'll talk about it again. We've talked about it at IRBC, our church as well, or the church that some of you attend. The imprecatory Psalms. Powerful prayers against wickedness. You know, I believe we should be in the street. In fact, if you get a chance to read, do we still have any of that book? We sold out, didn't we? How Christianity Changed the World. Where's Brooke? We sold out that, didn't it? In that book, How Christianity Changed the World, I didn't bring it with me tonight. We'll maybe someday order that again. I didn't realize something. Do you know who the first street demonstrations were organized by in the Roman Empire? First street demonstrations were organized by Christian bishops. So we should be in the street. But if we don't have enough bodies in the street, we can get in the closet and we can open up to Psalm 83 or Psalm 22 or Psalm 69 or Psalm 109, where God has given us prayers to pray against the wicked. You know, and some people look at me like, oh, what are you going to do? You get a little doll of Obama and stick pins into it? No. We're praying to God, okay? He's the one that acts, not us. By the way, as big a disgrace as Obama is, I gotta say this. He's not doing anything that we haven't given permission to do. We're the ones that gave up the ground first. He's just walking in and taking up what we've abandoned. It's hard to get upset at the guy. I mean, He's a disgrace, nothing less. But isn't it a bigger disgrace of what we've done to make him possible? Shame on us. Use what you have, not what you don't have. Reinforce those who stand on principle. Ah, come on, Joel, that's a no-brainer. My friends, think about this. Think about it. Don't we often run away from the guy standing on principle because nobody likes him? And that's no way to change things and so forth. The guy
Amen to that.
standing by himself on principle, and we can't run away from him fast enough. Stand with those who stand in principle. This is a human tendency. Everybody left Christ, we know it. But why should we ask Christ to save our nation if we will not stand by the people he's already given to us? Rare as it may be. Why not? And finally, you know what's coming. Educate. 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 You know how scared the pagans are of us in our little room here? Not that much. You know why? They got the next generation. And I find an amazing thing, and this is something we need to talk about more. I find an amazing thing. We live in a time when the numbers are out there saying that 70 to 80% of in our own Christian families, 70 to 80% of the next generation is leaving the faith. Yet, you know what's even more amazing? These are the same people, often enough, that tell me to just preach the gospel. Just preach the gospel. You're not even doing it in your own family. You know why? Because you've given up the whole counsel of God. And you won't teach that to anyone. Now, this last one, talking about education, here's where we're going to fall off the wagon here. Because you don't talk about this. You really don't. This is the one. You don't talk about public education. You don't do it. You get yourself in trouble. And I get it. I understand it. It's cool to go to the Friday night football games. I get it. Hope your kid's going to be the star. Whatever. I get it. But I got to ask you, my friends. You know, we've seen this so many times. I remember seeing years ago the statistics. Hey, the Christians are having, 3.2 kids. The pagans are having 0.5. We should be able to take over in a generation. I remember seeing those numbers. But you know what's happening? We're giving them away here. We are. You ever see that Charles Potter quote? I didn't bring it. Charles Potter, one of the Science of the Humans Manifesto had it figured out a lot better than we do. Charles Potter made a comment right in our faces. That's how little respect he had for us Christians. He said this. He said, "What good is 1 hour a week at Sunday school going to do? We have these kids for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week." And he mocked us. And he could. And we still don't get it. And perhaps I had the wrong attitude. I think at times I did. But I'm so grateful for a wife who worked so hard at teaching her children at home. Sometimes I was not much of a help. Sometimes I was. Are we still recording?
Going viral.
But here's the thing. How many of my kids are here? All right. Anyway, here's the thing about it. Some days I come home and you'd say to me, "Dear, we didn't get much done today. We just didn't get a whole lot done." And I would say, hoping to help the situation, I hope I was correct. Well, at least we don't have to deprogram them. A day of nothing is better than a day of destruction. I know it's going to come back and say, well, we have Christian teachers and so forth. I've heard that so many times. And this is what I've said. I said, you know what? It's great that you have a Christian teacher, and that teacher's probably not doing as much damage as what others do. But I hate to even talk that way, A Christian teacher has to get up there and act like there's no God every single day. Think about that. Can you and I can you and I live the rest of our lives that way? Pretending as if God doesn't exist? And I said to one person, I don't know if I really believe this or not. I told him that. But I said, you know what? I said, the Christian teacher has to get up there and act like he's a non-believer. I'd rather have a pagan get up there and act like he's a believer and teach my kids. I don't know if I really believe that or not, because they would do a good job of it. Here's what I do believe, though. If the state really wants to help us with education, instead of building these huge brick buildings, you've noticed that, right? Who builds with brick anymore? We got 2x4s and drywall. They got the bricks. This is Egypt all over again, right? They got the bricks. Those new public schools, they got the bricks, man. They're in good shape. While we're putting together whatever house we have left over after they drag the property taxes out of us. But instead of building all the huge buildings and building them again and again and all their programs, stop the whole thing. You really want to help us? I got a plan. Take all your teachers and turn them into housemaids. And come and clean the house while my wife teaches the kids. Now you're really helping out. And you form whatever housemaid union you want to form and squeeze it out of the rest of us. After a while, we'll fire you and we won't need you anyway. If you really want to help.